The door closed, and according to people close to the palace, the atmosphere inside that room changed instantly. Not because of shouting, not because of anger, but because of one very uncomfortable silence between King Felipe and Christian. And honestly, that silence may have revealed more than any official statement ever could. Because here's what I keep thinking about. If this meeting was truly routine, then why are royal insiders suddenly acting like every tiny detail matters? Why did people focus so much on Felipe's expression afterward? Why did Spanish media quietly shift the narrative from young romance to future responsibility almost overnight? Something happened in that room. And I don't think it was accidental. What's fascinating to me is how this entire story exploded at the exact same time other royal families are trying to control their own public image. While Prince William and Kate Middleton are carefully protecting the calm, traditional image of the British monarchy, Spain feels completely different right now. Spain feels emotional, unpredictable, human, and maybe that's why younger audiences are suddenly obsessed with Leonor's story. Because unlike the polished royal fairy tales people grew up hearing, this feels real. It feels messy, and the moment Felipe sat face to face with Christian, it stopped being young love gossip and became something much bigger. It became political. Now before we go deeper, pay attention to this because it matters later. People close to the palace say Felipe entered that meeting already carrying enormous pressure. Military expectations around Leonor are growing. Public expectations are growing. The monarchy itself is under pressure to modernize without losing authority. So imagine being Felipe for a second. You're not just meeting your daughter's rumored boyfriend. You're evaluating a possible future risk to the crown. That changes everything. And this is where my opinion completely shifts from the mainstream headlines. Most media outlets are treating Christian like the center of the story. I don't think he is. I think the real story is Felipe. His reaction, his body language, his timing, his silence. That's where the truth usually hides in royal families. And here's the part nobody says out loud. Felipe knows exactly what public love stories can do to a monarchy. He watched his own marriage become global tabloid material for years. He saw how public opinion can slowly eat away at royal authority. So when people say, oh, it was probably just a casual family meeting, I honestly don't buy it. Not in 2026. Not with social media dissecting every glance like it's courtroom evidence. And definitely not when Leonor's future role is this important. If you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Because the deeper you go into these royal stories, the more you realize the official version is usually the least interesting version. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. Sources close to royal observers noticed something unusual after the meeting. Not dramatic, not explosive, just controlled distance. And sometimes controlled distance tells you more than affection ever could. Think about it. If Felipe instantly approved of everything, the palace would subtly encourage warmth in public appearances afterward. Small visual signals, relaxed energy, carefully staged comfort. That's how modern royal PR works now. Look at how the British royals handle optics. Every gesture is intentional. Every photograph tells a story. Honestly, if Mr. Beast were running royal PR strategy, he'd probably say emotional storytelling matters more than official statements. And that's exactly what today's monarchies are struggling with. But Spain's palace seemed careful after this meeting, almost too careful, and I keep asking myself the same question. Was Felipe protecting Leonor, or protecting the institution itself? Because those are not always the same thing. That's the hidden tension nobody wants to discuss. A father can want happiness for his daughter while also fearing what that happiness could cost publicly. And if you really study Felipe over the years, one thing becomes obvious. He values stability above almost everything. That's why this meeting mattered so much. Not because Christian walked into a room, but because Felipe had to mentally calculate consequences in real time. And honestly, I think Christian probably felt it immediately. Imagine sitting across from a king who isn't just judging your personality, but quietly wondering whether your presence could someday trigger headlines, distractions, political criticism, or institutional instability. That's pressure most normal people can't even imagine. And this is where I think Leonor's situation becomes deeply human. Because for the first time, she may be realizing something painful. A future queen doesn't experience relationships the same way normal people do. Every emotion becomes public property. Every mistake becomes international discussion. Every relationship becomes strategy whether you want it or not. And I actually think that realization changed Leonor more than this meeting changed Felipe. Watch her carefully lately. There's a seriousness growing around her. Less spontaneity, more calculation, more emotional restraint. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens when somebody begins understanding the true cost of their future role. Now let me give you a hot take that some people will disagree with. I don't think Felipe fears scandal the most. I think he fears distraction. Huge difference. Scandal can sometimes disappear, but distraction slowly weakens royal authority over time. And in Spain right now, the monarchy cannot afford weakness. Especially not during a period where younger generations already question traditional institutions more than ever before. That's why this meeting carried emotional weight far beyond romance. It represented a collision between private life and public duty. And history shows duty usually wins. But here's the interesting part. Felipe himself once represented modernization for the monarchy. People saw him as calmer, more disciplined, more relatable than previous generations. Now suddenly, he's becoming the guardian of tradition. That transformation is fascinating to watch in real time. It's almost like every royal eventually becomes the thing they once tried to reform. And maybe that's exactly what Leonor is starting to notice. Because if Leonor wants a different kind of monarchy someday, more open, more emotionally transparent, more connected to younger people, then moments like this become defining memories. Not public speeches, private rooms, private conversations, private silences. Those are the moments future monarchs never forget. And honestly, I think Christian walked into that room expecting evaluation. But I don't think he expected the emotional complexity behind it. Because Felipe wasn't just looking at him. He was looking at the future. The future headlines, the future pressure, the future expectations, and maybe even the future pain his daughter could experience. That changes the emotional temperature of a room instantly. Now let's talk about something people online completely misunderstood. A lot of viewers keep asking, did Felipe approve or disapprove? But I think that question is too simple. Royal families rarely think in extremes. It's not usually, yes, or, no. It's, can this survive pressure? Can this survive media? Can this survive protocol? Can this survive history? That's the real royal checklist. And honestly, very few relationships survive all four. That's why I believe the mood after the meeting matters more than the meeting itself. Because sometimes the absence of visible celebration tells its own story. And I noticed something else. The palace never aggressively denied public curiosity surrounding the meeting. That's important, because modern royal strategy often uses controlled mystery intentionally. Curiosity keeps public attention alive while avoiding direct confirmation. In other words, the uncertainty itself becomes part of the narrative. And whether people support Leonor and Christian together or not, one thing is undeniable. People are emotionally invested now. Not because of palace announcements, but because the story feels unfinished. And unfinished stories create obsession online. That's why these royal narratives spread so fast in 2026. People don't just consume information anymore. They emotionally participate in it. They choose sides, interpret body language, analyze silence, replay footage, debate hidden meanings. It becomes interactive storytelling in real time. And maybe that's the biggest challenge monarchies face today. Not scandals, not criticism, but the fact that audiences now expect emotional transparency from institutions built on emotional restraint. That's an impossible balance. Now personally, here's what I learned watching this entire situation unfold. The older generation inside royal systems still believes control creates stability. But younger audiences connect more deeply with vulnerability. That gap is growing wider every year. And Leonor is standing directly in the middle of it. Which means every personal decision she makes now becomes symbolic whether she wants it or not. That's an exhausting way to live. And honestly, I think Felipe knows that better than anyone in the palace. Maybe that's why the meeting reportedly felt so serious. Not hostile, not dramatic, just heavy. Heavy with implications. Heavy with responsibility. Heavy with the realization that Leonor's private life may never truly belong to her again. And if that sounds harsh, it's because it probably is. But that's the hidden reality behind modern royalty people rarely talk about. The crown doesn't just shape your future. It slowly reshapes your relationships too. And maybe, that's what really happened in the room when Felipe met Christian. Not anger, not approval, not rejection, just the quiet understanding that from this point forward, nothing about Leonor's life will ever be simple again. And honestly, I think everyone in that room knew it.